Martin, for coming to the filming of this show. Wow. I wish I could turn the camera around right now and show you guys the crowd we have today. We don't have the exact numbers yet, but I would say this is probably the largest crowd attendance for the filming of a sports show in history. It's really that big. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm going to jump into that right now. First week of the Pirates season's in the books. They played 2 of the 3 games against the Red Sox. They're going to play the other one tomorrow. They also played a weekend series against the Atlanta Braves and ended up sweeping them, starting the season 0-2, even though they faced 2 great pitchers against the Red Sox. It was great for them to get a sweep against the Braves. I'm going to talk to you guys about some things that I saw in that first week. Gerrit Cole, still don't really know what kind of Gerrit Cole we're going to get this season. I don't know, he didn't blow me away with his start against the Red Sox, and his Sunday start against the Braves wasn't really that great either. So we'll see what happens with him. Nova, I think, is the best. Nova and Taillon are definitely the top 2 pitchers so far in terms of how they've been able to handle themselves and the kind of stuff they've brought with their pitches. I mean, they both look like pretty solid pitchers so far. Chad Kuhl ended up only giving 2 earned runs over 5 after having a shaky start in his game Saturday. I still think that he's going to be all right. Number 5 spot still, though, questionable in the rotation. Tyler Glasnow. Yeah, he just did not have his stuff together in that game. I'm still going to give him a couple more starts before you make any decisions. I still think the 5th rotation spot should have went to Trevor Williams. I still think it's going to go to Trevor Williams. And this is why I was talking about, the possibility of trading for Jose Quintana. Tyler Glasnow is a really important piece in that trade as far as the White Sox are concerned. The longer you keep him on the roster, the bigger of a gamble you're taking if he doesn't pan out. If he doesn't pan out, then this could end up being really bad for the team in the long run, and they don't have any value to trade for him. If they trade him right now, they could trade for an established pitcher in Quintana, and that way you don't really have to guess what you're going to get. They also showed that they really don't trust Josh Bell's defense at first yet. They made some late game defensive substitutions at first, and Hurdle says that, they're not going to keep him out there at first base for a full game until they're fully confident in a late game situation that his baseball IQ is going to cause him to make the right decisions in fielding and throwing. Adam Frazier, as I predicted, looked pretty good in that first week. I still think that he should be an everyday man in that lineup, and I think that he's going to just continue to progress going forward. Ben Roethlisberger announced officially that he's going to be back next season, to no one's surprise. I still think this was a move like, Jerome Bettis after they lost the AFC Championship game to the Patriots. He just reached that point in his career. You start to question, how many more times do I really need to keep preparing myself for this? But the main goal is still to win a championship, and that's what ended up playing a factor in him coming back. Ended up winning a championship in Detroit. While the Super Bowl won't be in Ohio this coming season, Ben Roethlisberger, I still think he's chasing another Super Bowl trophy, another Lombardi before he retires. I think he also wanted the team to show that they're making a commitment to the weapons around him in order for him to come back and compete for a championship. And this can mean one or two things, because he's really showed some uncertainty as to whether he's going to be back after this coming season. If he keeps coming back for the next few years and the Steelers, decide to take a gamble and pick a quarterback in this year's draft whenever they could draft at other positions, that could really end up hurting them. But I do think that this could also be him telling them, I may not be playing that many more years, so get your guy now. If you don't think Landry Jones is going to be the quarterback for this team going forward, go get your guy now. The Stanley Cup playoffs start today, and so does the Penguins series against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Evgeny Malkin's going to be back. Carl Hagelin's not far from being back. Olli Määttä and Trevor Daley are both back. The healthier they get, the better they're going to get and the more players that they need, especially defensively. Malkin is a great guy to get back right now because he is a guy that it's like he's in mid-season form right whenever he comes back from an injury. So I think he's going to be a welcome addition to them, especially to the power play. He ended up becoming a big factor in their power play this year, and I always think that he has been, but the production's really been there this season. He will definitely boost their power play. I like Pittsburgh's chances in 5 or 6 against Columbus. I think it's going to be a great matchup against the Capitals next round. And so for my Stanley Cup final predictions, I think either the Penguins or the Capitals. Nashville and Chicago is going to be a great first round matchup in the West, and I truly think that the winner of that series, and I do think that series is going to go to 7. I think the winner of that series will go to the Stanley Cup Finals out of the West. So I would say either the Penguins or Capitals versus either Chicago or Nashville. And in the Masters, Sergio Garcia and Justin Rose went into a playoff hole after both missed crucial putts on the 18th. Sergio Garcia is a guy that's always there on the final day, and he finally was able to close it out in the Masters, so I'm really happy to see him win. As always, you guys asked some great questions for this week's Stick to Sports social media segment, so let's jump right into them. Our first question comes from Drew. Drew asks, who would you have rather won the Masters, Sergio Garcia or Ricky Fowler? Well, Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth are 2 golfers that I always usually pull for. However, like I said, Sergio Garcia is always a guy that's there on the final days. So I'm glad to finally see him close one out. Really happy for him. Our next question comes from Ryan, and Ryan asks, who'd win in a foot race, Aaron Gray or Casey Hampton? Okay, so I thought about this for a little bit, and I have to say that if it's a distance race, I would say Aaron Gray gets that. He probably has a little bit more endurance, also has some bigger strides than Casey Hampton. If it's short distance, though, I'd say it could be possibly be neck and neck. Casey Hampton was a defensive lineman, so if he has a great quick step, short burst of speed in a short distance race, Casey Hampton, Snack's probably gonna get it done. So yeah, if it's longer distance, Aaron Gray's probably got it. Shorter distance, Casey Hampton might edge him out. You never know. Our next question comes from Nick, and Nick asks, beard or no beard for Pedro Alvarez? Well, Nick, I say beard all the way. I believe he holds all of his power in his beard. However, wait a second. Whenever he was fielding well at third base, he didn't have a beard. Nick, you might help me figure this out. We might be onto something here. We have officially solved the curious case of Pedro Alvarez. All he needs to do, if he has a beard now, shave it off. All that balance is going to get back, and he's going to be throwing darts. We solved it. Pedro Alvarez, no beard, your fielding's back. Enjoy your MVP season. Our next question comes from Evan, and Evan asks, how many different starting pitchers will be in the Pirates rotation this season? Well, I think Cole, Taillon, and Nova are locks for the rotation right now as long as they stay healthy, or for whatever reason one of them gets traded. That would probably be the only thing to change that. Chad Kuhl, he had a shaky first start, but he still finished it strong. I still think he'll do all right this year in the rotation. The number 5 spot's the one that's questionable. Glasnow didn't get out of his first game. He did not have a solid first start of the season. All indications right now are that it's his spot to lose, and I do think he'll eventually lose it to Trevor Williams. Our next question comes from Josh. Josh asks, will Kutch be able to turn it around this year, and will the switch to right field improve his fielding stats since he has less range to cover? Well, I believe the stat you were talking about in particular was defensive runs saved, which he finished worse in the league last year. What that stat is, it quantifies a player's entire defensive performance by attempting to measure how many runs a defender saved. It takes into account errors, range, outfield arm, and double play ability. So yes, I have a feeling that stat's going to improve for him a lot this year. I think he's going to gun down some throws this year. I think he's going to show great range in the right field. So yeah, I would say that defensively, I think he's going to have a lot better season this year out of right. And as I said before, that's just only going to build his confidence. And so I think the bat's going to come around this year too. Yeah, I think he's going to have a great season this year. His defense is going to be better, and he's going to have a better bat. Our next question comes from Jess. And Jess asks, who is your favorite sister? Next question. Our next non-family question comes from David, and David asks, do you think they should play Fleury or Murray more this playoff round, and why? Well, I think they trust both goalies. They obviously show that they have a little bit more confidence in Murray. They want Murray to be their number one guy. The fact that they didn't send Tristan Jarry back down to the minors immediately shows that there might be some concern that Murray might have a minor injury. So that would be something to watch. I mean, if he does have something that's bothering him, I think he should come out and tell the trainers now, because the playoffs are a long haul. And if the Penguins want to repeat again this year, I think they need both goalies to be healthy and on top of their game. If Murray is the guy for the majority of the playoffs for them, or for all the playoffs for them, then I think defensively the Penguins need to do a better job of protecting his glove side. He has shown that his glove side is still a little bit of a weakness for him. I think Murray's going to get the more playing time. Fleury's been a solid goalie for them in his career, but last season you could see that transition to where they wanted Murray to be the guy, and they still have shown that this year. It all depends on if Murray has an injury or not, and if he doesn't, my guess is he's going to do the lion's share of the work for the Penguins in goalless playoffs. Our next question comes from Mike, and Mike asks, can the Daley-Mata pairing regain mid-season form in time to be a true shutdown option given the prospect of facing Alexander the Great in round 2? Great? Well, right now, obviously, their most reliable defensive pairing is going to be Justin Schultz and Ian Cole. However, Dumoulin-Hainsey is going to be another pairing for them. I really like Brian Dumoulin. Having Daley and Mata back, though, is definitely huge for this team. Daley was a guy that they relied on a lot in the playoffs last year, and while he didn't fully play, I think, to the level that he played last season, he's still an important piece for this team. And if Ole can get things turned around, I honestly think that this 8 weeks off or so, I think that's going to prove crucial to him. I think it's going to be really beneficial to him. This kid's been through a lot, and I think some time away from the rink, some time to rest, I think that's going to end up being really important for him. And I think he could possibly go back to his old form. Our last question is actually 2 questions, but I have one answer for both of these. So I want to say both questions before I get my answer. The first question is from Mark, and Mark asks, do you think Harden deserves the MVP over Westbrook? The second question comes from Jared. Jared asks, with Westbrook breaking the triple-double record for a season and his clutch play in the final minutes of games, why are people still arguing for Harden to be the MVP? Well, let's look at Westbrook. He averaged a triple-double for the season, and he's only the second player in NBA history to do that. His team won almost 80% of the games in which he did register a triple-double, and he has the record for the most triple-doubles in a single season. He got them to the playoffs without Kevin Durant. So yeah, he did have a great season. James Harden did not have a great season last year, made the switch to point guard this year, had a great season playing point guard for the Rockets. His offensive scheme for his team, though, I do think that helped them out because that opened up a lot more scoring. They also finished with more wins than the Thunder, so obviously in the writers' minds that's going to be a factor in MVP voting. Also didn't play a lot of defense as usual. He's still a little bit lazy on defense, so I think that will factor negatively into that. Here's the thing with both guys, though. They both finished terribly in field goal percentage. Harden finished 92nd in the league. Westbrook finished 101st in the league. Harden and Westbrook will also finish 1 and 2 this year in total turnovers, and they will also now be first and second all-time for a single season with the most turnovers. They both combined for 894 turnovers this season. It's ridiculous. And did it affect their teams? Yeah, it did. In assist-to-turnover ratio, the Rockets will finish 16th worst in the league, and the Thunder will finish 27th worst in the league. Opponent points off turnover, the Rockets will finish 25th worst in the league. The Thunder, 21st worst in the league. So obviously their turnovers affected their team's play. The other stat to look into, and I'm not trying to take away anything from the season that Russell Westbrook had, because I do like Westbrook and he did have a great season. But if you look at his rebounding numbers, he finished with 178 contested rebounds and 685 uncontested rebounds this season. 80% of his rebounds were uncontested. I'll tell you about someone this season though that had career bests in rebounds, career bests in assists, and had one of his best seasons shooting almost 55%. His name? LeBron James. He could probably have more rebounds a game. He could probably have more assists per game. But that's not the player that he is. He's a guy that tries to boost up the rest of his team. He's completely unselfish and he has a basketball IQ that's unbelievable. He could definitely be a great coach someday. And when I think about the most valuable player in a league, it should be the player that holds the most value to their team. It should be a guy that whenever you're starting a franchise, this is the guy that you want because you know that you could surround him with 4 other players and this guy's going to make those 4 other players better and he's going to play great. So as far as I'm concerned, every season that LeBron James is in the league, he should be the MVP. That's not what the media wants, and they've showed it. They vote other guys to be the MVP, and I really do think it's going to come down to either Harden or Westbrook this year. Out of the two, I think Westbrook is more deserving, and I think the MVP trophy will go to Westbrook, but it should be LeBron. Well, I think that about does it for this week's show. The Pitt football spring game is this weekend, so I hope to have some bits and pieces from that to talk about next week with you guys. Have a great weekend. Today's show is brought to you by Shaw's Bait Company. For more information, please visit their Facebook page.